Let's go to Greg. Greg is now writing in a question, Leviticus chapter 12. He says, why is there a difference between the time of cleansing between the male and the female child? Yep. The differences even in the Levitical law for male and female, a lot of this has to do with the effect of a male child or the effect of a female child. All of this is ceremonial. Remember this, right? The ceremonial law makes differentiations that are not spiritual or eternal or God's valued distinctions, right? Even in the redemption price, right? The kind of work that would be brought to an ancient agricultural society, right? You've got an agrarian society. The labor of a man is going to bring in more income than it would be for a woman, and so the redemption price is different. But we know from Genesis 1, equal value before God. Think of this: the disabled cannot serve as in the Levitical law as a priest. They can't go onto the into the holy place or the Holy of Holies. You couldn't do that if you had any particular kind of disease or if you had some deformity. But of course, the Bible's very clear. These people, as we learned from John 9 and all throughout the Scripture, they have the same equal worth as an individual, that they're made in the image of God. So the distinctions in the Levitical law are trying to express something that God is arranging, just like he does in his dietary restrictions. It's not that shellfish are bad for you, and the meat of a cow is better for you. I'm just saying the distinctions were made for ceremonial purposes, for people to live in a fastidious, circumspect way, to use some old biblical concepts. They're supposed to be thinking very carefully about each step they take and the things that make a difference in the ceremonial law, to give them a kind of focus on making sure that all the details of their lives are done in a way that pleases God. The detail that is given to whether or not the cleansing in Leviticus 12 is going to be this long for a male or this long for a female, or what the redemption price is going to be, or whatever it might be, right? Whether it's firstborn child has to be bought back with a redemption price, but the secondborn doesn't, certainly doesn't mean secondborn is not as important as the firstborn. I mean, that's clear just even in Jesus. In Old Testament, when God calls David as the youngest, and often throughout even the book of Genesis, it's the secondborn that ends up being the leader of the clan or the leader of that generation, and the oldest is serving the youngest. I mean, Joseph at the end of the book of Genesis, clearly making this point. So all of that, just remember, it's not a statement of worth. It never is a statement of how these people appear to God. This is always something that was done to create a kind of ceremonial distinction for the sake of people being very careful to live carefully before God when it came to the worship of the Old Testament. It's like I often illustrated this weekend in the pulpit again, about the ceremonial law being like what you would tell your bridesmaids to do, gals, at a wedding, what they're supposed to wear, what kind of dress they're supposed to wear, or the men, what kind of tuxes they're supposed to wear, or what kind of ties they're supposed to wear. All of that really doesn't matter. You're not more important if you have a tie on a platform than the person that's sitting in the front row or the back row that are your friends there celebrating with you on the day of your nuptials. But the distinction is made for the sake of the ceremony, and the ceremony is done with your intentions and whatever you believe the glory and the beauty of that situation is supposed to represent, and that is your prerogative. And God is showing in all of his rules his prerogative, all the way back to the garden. In the garden, this particular tree, it's not that it was unhealthy for you. There was nothing about it in and of itself that was unhealthy. It's just that you can't take the prerogative of doing whatever you want in the garden. You've got to do what the king says, and the king says, don't eat of that tree. You don't eat of that tree. He could have said, don't eat of a fig tree or an almond tree, but he didn't. He said, this particular tree, and he gave it a name, and he said, don't eat from this tree. So the prerogative has to be God. And if you're going to go to God's ceremony, like in the book of Leviticus, chapter 12, you better do it the way he says, even if some of this doesn't make sense. I got to wear a cummerbund to this. I got to wear a tux to this. I got to gel my hair. I got to buff my shoes, whatever. Yes, you're going to do whatever the prerogative of the king is, and that's so that you're very careful to know the king makes the rules, and we follow them, and sometimes they seem absurd, even in the New Covenant age. And I can talk more about that after we take a call.